They sold the blind girl for $1, until the silent cowboy took her hand and said, "You'll see home again." Abilene, Kansas, late autumn, 1873. Dust blew low across the ground, turning the morning light the color of rust. In the center of the town square, a makeshift auction stage had been thrown together from wagon planks and beer crates. Men crowded around it, ranch hands, drifters, trail drovers, faces roughened by wind and whiskey. The air carried the smell of stale tobacco and sour sweat, a kind of stench that settled in places where mercy had long since been priced and sold. On top of a wooden crate stood Hattie Quinn, her bare feet red from the cold. Burlap covered her face, tied tight behind her head. Her hands were bound lightly at the wrists, as if the rope was more for humiliation than restraint. Her dress, once pale blue, was now torn and smudged with soot. The girl stood still, not trembling, not resisting, only listening, head tilted slightly as though the world around her was a thing she had learned to navigate by sound alone. The auctioneer, a broad-shouldered saloon keeper with a greasy vest and liquor-heavy breath, slammed his stick against the post. "All right, boys," he barked, grin wide and rotten. "Next up, fresh stock. Blind girl does not see, barely speaks, and sure as hell can't fight back. $1. A whole woman for less than a bottle of rye." Someone whistled. Someone else laughed too loud. "Blind and silent? Hell, that's convenient," a man jeered. Another called out, "Maybe she's a corpse wearing a dress." The crowd erupted in ugly laughter, boots scraping the dirt, coins jingling in pockets but never coming out. The burlap on Hattie's face shifted slightly with her breath, steady, controlled, too calm for someone standing on the edge of being sold like refuse. It was the calm of someone who had already endured the worst. The saloon keeper tapped the crate again. "Come on, folks. $1. Anybody? She ain't worth more, but she ain't worth less." No one stepped forward, because everyone knew who she was. Hattie Quinn, daughter of Martin and Eliza Quinn, once modest ranchers until the fire took their land and their lives. The girl who had been blind since she was 6, when a fever burned the light from her eyes. The girl who worked at a boarding house for meals and a cot, only to be accused by the innkeeper of murder when he fell down the stairs during a drunken rage. With no witnesses, no family, and no sight, the town had chosen the easiest verdict: guilty. She was sent away, passed from charity house to charity house, each turning her out when they discovered the accusation on her name. Eventually she landed in the hands of the saloon keeper, who fed her scraps, worked her to exhaustion, and now stood ready to sell her like broken furniture. "Damn shame," someone muttered. "But who'd want a ruined girl who can't even see the man who buys her?" Hattie's chin dipped slightly, not in shame, but in resignation, the kind born from years of being pushed from one cruel hand to another. The saloon keeper raised his voice louder. "Last call, $1. Just one damn dollar." Silence fell, until a bootstep cut through it. From the edge of the crowd, a tall man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat dusted with the gray of the trail. His hat cast a shadow across his face, but his posture spoke plainly, controlled, unhurried, dangerous in the quiet way storms are before they break. Enoch Wilder. Most men in town had seen him only from a distance, on horseback near the blacksmith shop, or walking the ridge alone. A former soldier, they whispered, a man who'd seen too much fire and too many graves. But he never stayed long enough to confirm any rumor. He spoke rarely, he drank never, and he had a silence to him that felt carved from stone. The crowd parted instinctively as he approached the stage. Enoch didn't look at the saloon keeper. He didn't look at the jeering men. He looked only at the ground as he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a single silver dollar, and let it fall. The coin hit the dirt with a clean, ringing sound, so sharp it seemed to slice the laughter in half. The saloon keeper blinked. You're buyin' her?" Enoch didn't answer. He just stepped up, reached out, and took Hattie's bound hands gently in his own. For the first time that morning, her breath caught. He leaned close, voice low enough for only her to hear. "You're going home now," he murmured. Then he untied her wrists with quiet care. A ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion, unease, something like shame, though most would never admit it. Hattie stood still, her hands free but trembling, just once. Enoch guided her down from the crate, steadying her with a firm, respectful hold. Not possession, not triumph. Simply protection. The saloon-keeper laughed nervously. "Well, there you have it, boys. She's his now." But the crowd no longer laughed. They just watched. The way men watch something they didn't expect. Something they'd forgotten could exist in a place like Abilene. The road out of Abilene stretched like a vein of dust between dying trees. Hattie Quinn sat atop the gelding, her back straight, but her fingers clutched the saddle horn tighter than necessary. Her ears caught every creak of leather, every shift in Enoch Wilder's boots as he walked beside the horse. He never rode, never rushed. He just walked, silent, like a man with nowhere to be, and too many ghosts behind him. They had gone a mile before she broke the quiet. "Do I belong to you now?" she asked softly. Enoch didn't look up. "No, you belong to yourself." She turned her face toward the sound of his voice. "Then why did you pay for me?" He let a few heartbeats pass. "Because no one else should have had the chance." Silence again, but this one was warmer. By dusk, they reached a small cabin nestled under the ridge. Smoke curled from the chimney. The place didn't look like much, just a porch, a shed, and the shape of a well nearby, but the ground was swept and the windows clean. Everything about it said, "Someone lives here, like it matters." He led the horse to the porch and reached up. "Left foot down first," he murmured. "There's a step." She obeyed, and when her boots hit the boards, she felt the faint warmth of the fire drifting from inside. "There's a door," he added, pushing it open. Inside smelled of pine, ash, and something like stew. The hearth glowed softly. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. He brought her a bowl, guided her hand to the rim. "Careful, it's hot." Her fingers traced the shape. "Did you make this spoon?" "Yes." "It's smooth, like it was carved for small hands." He didn't answer. She tasted the stew, slowly. "It's not bad. Work." "That's high praise," he said. She chuckled. He built a small routine after that. He never hovered, never touched her unless to guide. He taught her the cabin like someone mapping a world, 12 steps from bed to fire, 3 from the table to chair. One morning, she bumped into the counter and dropped a tin mug. It clattered. She froze. But he just said, "No harm done." "Another day," she asked, while touching the stone floor with her toes. "Why don't you ask about my past?" "Because you'll tell me if you want to," he replied. "And if I never do?" "That's your right." She tilted her head. "You don't pity me?" "No." "Then what do you see?" He paused. "A person, same as me." That night, he sat outside and played a reed flute, low, slow notes that floated through the timber walls. She stood by the door, listening. "What's that sound?" "A tune my brother used to hum when we were boys." "I can't see music," she said, "but I can feel it in my ribs." He kept playing. "Enoch?" she asked. "Mm-hmm. Most people treat me like I'm made of glass, or like I'm already broken. You're neither." I used to be scared of silence. Now I think it's kinder than most words. His hands didn't falter. "Then we'll keep the silence." Later, as the fire crackled low, she sat by the hearth, blanket around her shoulders. "Do you really live here alone?" "Yes." "Why?" "It's quieter than the war." She didn't ask which war. She didn't need to. "You're not what I expected," she said. "And what did you expect?" She gave a faint smile. "Someone who wanted to fix me, or own me, or save me." He looked at her for a long moment. "I can't save you, Hattie," he said. But I can walk beside you if you want. She turned her face toward him again, sightless, but steady. I think I'd like that. It began with the sound of hooves. A single rider made his way up the ridge trail, broad-shouldered, older, the kind of man whose badge had worn deeper than his wrinkles. He introduced himself as Clay Duncan, retired lawman from Salina, asking for Enoch Wilder. They sat outside the cabin, on the porch steps, boots scraping against wood worn smooth by weather and time. Hattie stayed inside but left the door slightly ajar. She listened, not because she was nosy, but because truth had a sound, and she had spent her whole life learning how to hear it. "Wilder," Clay said, "you still playing ghost up in these hills?" "Wasn't looking to be found," Enoch replied. "Figured that. Word is, a certain bounty man's been poking around Abilene, sniffing out a girl who vanished after a $1 sale." Enoch said nothing. Clay exhaled. "You always were too soft for that badge. That's why they clipped you, right? Refused to arrest that Apache boy when the rancher's son started the fight." Enoch looked him square in the eye. "I didn't come here to relive it." Clay nodded. "Just figured you'd want to know what's creeping your way." When the rider left, Hattie stepped out quietly. "Is it true?" she asked. Enoch didn't pretend he hadn't known she was listening. "Most of it. I used to think no one ever chose to do the right thing when it cost too much," she said. "Guess I was wrong." She sat on the porch rail, hands folded in her lap. "I lost my sight when I was 6, she said suddenly. "Scarlet fever. My mother said I had angel eyes, shining too bright for this world. I think she just didn't want me to feel broken." Enoch waited. "My parents owned a small patch of land, too close to the tracks the railroad wanted. One night, someone set fire to our barn. My parents tried to fight it. They died saving horses no one wanted." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "After that, no one would hire me. I ended up scrubbing floors at the boarding house. Mr. Tate, the owner, he said I owed him more than work. When I fought back, he fell. Broke his neck on the stair rail. I didn't push him, but no one believed me." Enoch's jaw tensed. "There was no trial, just whispers. People said I was cursed, dangerous. I got passed around between missions, charities, until that bar owner bought me for the cost of a bottle." She turned toward Enoch. "I'm not telling you this for pity. I know. I'm telling you because you never asked, and that made me feel like a person again." He looked at her, long and quiet. "I don't believe you because of what you said," he told her. "I believe you because of how you've listened, to the land, to me, to silence." A breath passed between them, full of things neither needed to explain. For the first time, the past didn't echo like a sentence. It just sounded like the truth. Enoch didn't say anything the morning he handed Hattie the cane. He simply placed it in her hand, juniper wood, polished, smooth, with a crook handle and a rounded rubber tip that gave under pressure but never slipped. Her fingers closed around it instinctively. "What's this?" she asked. "Something I've been working on," he said. "It's yours." She traced its length, noticing the slight imperfections in the grain, the warmth still lingering from his hands. "It's beautiful. It's not meant to be. It's meant to help." He didn't hover as she stood from the cot. Instead, he stepped back and let her find her feet. "From here to the stove is 12 steps, he said. "You'll feel a soft creak in the third plank. That's your mark." With slow, cautious movements, Hattie took her first steps. The cane tapped lightly, the rubber tip making small, muffled sounds against the wood floor. She stumbled once, when her foot caught the edge of a woven rug. Enoch didn't rush to catch her. He let her sway, regain her balance. "Go on," he said. And she did. By the end of the week, she could find her way from bed to basin, from table to window. She learned the pitch of boiling water, the weight of a ladle filled halfway. Enoch showed her how to feel the warmth of the kettle rising, how to tell the difference between pine smoke and roasting beans. Outside, the world opened wider but moved trickier. The porch had 3 steps, uneven from years of sagging. She spent a full morning learning to feel each one with the cane before trusting her foot. Enoch stood nearby, arms crossed. "You're watching me," she accused, breathless. "Making sure the ground doesn't lie to you," he said. They laughed together, for the first time. Later that week, Enoch led her to the edge of the garden. "Lavenders to your left, thyme to your right. Don't touch the nettles." She crouched and inhaled. The sharp, calming scent of lavender hit her nose. "I can smell it before I touch it," she said. "That's the point." The next morning, Hattie rose before dawn. Alone, she found her way to the porch, down the steps, and into the garden where the dew still clung to leaves. Her cane tapped the dirt softly. Enoch saw her from the window and didn't interfere. She stopped in the middle of the garden, head tilted toward the soft wind. "I've never stood outside alone," she said when he joined her. "Not once. Not without someone yanking me by the arm, or shouting at me to move." He looked at her, the sun catching in the wisps of hair loose around her temples. "No one's yanking you now," she smiled. "No, now I choose." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. That night, after stew and soft bread, she sat by the fire with the cane resting across her knees. "You didn't ask me to tell you anything about my past," she said quietly. "No, but you made me a tool to walk toward the future." Enoch turned the spoon in his hand. "It's not a gift." "What is it then?" "A key." She sat with that thought, letting it settle. "It's funny," she said. "I can't see, but I finally feel like I'm not stumbling anymore. You're not. I feel like I've been walking in someone else's shoes, and now, for the first time, they actually fit." Enoch looked at her, then at the cane, at the way her fingers curled around it like it belonged. "You're not walking in someone else's anything," he said. "You're walking as you." A silence passed, full but gentle. Then, almost to herself, she whispered, "I didn't know I could be brave." "You don't need to know," he said. "You just need to keep stepping forward." And so, she did. The next morning, Hattie opened the door on her own. The day was crisp, the air sharp with pine and frost. She stepped outside without waiting for help, her cane guiding her with steady rhythm. This time, the earth beneath her felt like hers. The first snowfall came silent and slow, dusting the world in white. It clung to pine needles and porch steps, blanketed the ground with deceptive softness. Enoch noticed it right away, the wrong kind of print. Near the edge of the tree line, just beyond the smoke path of the cabin, were fresh hoof marks, deep, heavy, and beside them, boot tracks, not his, not hers. Wide gait, hard heel. He knelt down and touched the snow. Too fresh. That night, he locked the door, braced the windows, and made sure the trap door to the root cellar opened smooth and quiet. Next morning, as Hattie stirred near the hearth, he said, "If I'm not here one day, and you hear knocking, don't open. Not until you're sure." Her head tilted. "Why? What's wrong?" "Just caution." She didn't push further, she never did. But when he brought down an old quilt and tucked it into the cellar hatch, she understood. In town, Morgan Fitch slid a coin across the counter of the Broken Lantern Saloon. "Looking for a girl," he said. The barkeep barely looked up. "Ain't we all? This one's blind, white, young, sold a while back by a man named Sturgis." Now the barkeep did look. He swallowed. "Don't know much." Morgan pulled out a yellowed sheet of paper, fake legal claim of ownership, stamped with a forged seal. "According to this, she's mine, and there's $50 for anyone who helps me find her." Word traveled fast in small towns, and money spoke faster. A stable hand named Keegan, 2 weeks behind on rent and a month hungry, whispered what he'd seen. Tall man took her, gray coat, quiet sort, headed north. Might be Wilder. Morgan didn't smile, but he tipped his hat. The snow deepened. Enoch started sleeping with his rifle near the door. At night, he walked the perimeter with only moonlight and instinct. It was during one of these rounds he found a fresh set of tracks, less than an hour old, coming in close. Watching. He followed them until they vanished into creek rocks. He didn't chase. Predators like to be chased. Instead, he circled back home, checked the cellar. Hattie was asleep, her cane beside her bed. Next morning, he saddled up and rode a patrol trail. That's when he saw the man. Morgan Fitch sat on horseback beneath a dying elm, chewing on a twig like he owned the dirt around him. "Fine day," Morgan called. Enoch nodded, but didn't stop. "You Wilder?" Morgan pressed. "Depends. You from Abilene?" "Not recently." Morgan grinned, teeth yellowed. "Heard you might have a girl with you. Blind one. Pretty." Enoch said nothing. "Don't take it personal. Just business. She ain't legal. Got the papers to prove it." "Papers ain't people," Enoch said flatly. Morgan's eyes narrowed. "Still, someone paid for her. That makes her... she's not property." Morgan leaned forward in the saddle. "Tell you what. Hand her over, no trouble. I'll give you $10 for your kindness." Enoch looked at him. Really looked. And then, in a voice like stone, said, "You'll want to turn around before your horse takes a bullet meant for you." Morgan didn't move right away, but something in Enoch's eyes made even a man like him pause. He turned, rode slow, but not away. No, men like Morgan circled, waited, tracked, and somewhere out there were more like him. Greedy men with forged papers and hollow souls, moving from Missouri to Kansas, buying and selling stories like Hattie's for a quick profit. Enoch knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The plan, at first, was escape. Enoch laid out maps across the table, tracing a narrow trail that wove along the ridge and into Dakota Territory, a place no one asked questions, a place men like Morgan Fitch didn't dare follow. But when he turned to Hattie, she shook her head. "I won't run again," she said. "It's safer." "Safer for now," she said, "but if I keep running, I'll always be the hunted, always waiting for boots in the snow." Enoch didn't argue. He just folded the map. "So what do we do?" he asked. "We fight." He raised a brow. "How?" She paused. There was someone, Mavis Greer. She worked at the boarding house. She saw what happened the night Tate died. Enoch thought a moment. "You think she'll talk?" "I think if she remembers me, not the blind girl but me, she might." They left before dawn, rode 2 days in silence, cloaked in snow and fog. The town of Elkhorn was small, tucked behind a line of freight wagons and red brick storefronts. Mavis Greer worked in a diner called the Lucky Pan. Grease clung to the windows, and the smell of bacon drifted into the street. Enoch stayed outside. Inside, Hattie stepped carefully, cane tapping. She stood at the counter until a woman's voice asked, "You need a seat, hun." Hattie lifted her head. "Mavis Greer?" Silence. Then, cautious. "Who's asking?" "Hattie Quinn." The clang of a spatula hit the stove. "I don't know that name," the woman lied. "You worked the night he died, Mr. Tate. You brought me tea just before he came into my room." Mavis didn't speak. "You dropped the cup," Hattie added, "because you heard him yelling, and when you came back, the floor was wet from the broken pot." Still silence. Then, the scrape of a chair. Footsteps. Mavis stood in front of her, breath sharp. "I didn't say anything back then because I was scared. And poor. And he had friends. I'm not asking you to fix what happened," Hattie said softly. "Just to tell the truth." Tears welled in Mavis's eyes. "You still remember that night?" "Every step." Mavis sat down hard. "I should have spoken up. You still can." Outside, in the shadow of the saloon, Morgan Fitch leaned against his horse, watching the diner door. He spat tobacco into the snow and grinned. He'd followed the tracks, asked the right men, greased the right palms. Now he just had to wait. He already had the noose. All he needed was the neck. Inside, Mavis finally nodded. "I'll do it. I'll testify. Hell, I'll scream it in the street if I have to. Thank you, Hattie said. You were just a girl, Mavis whispered. You deserved better. We both did. Mavis looked toward the window. You came here with someone? Hattie smiled faintly. A man who listens. Well, let's hope he's good with a gun too, Mavis muttered, because I think someone's been watching us. And just like that, the air turned sharp. The trap was already closing, and Morgan Fitch was already on the move. The wind had shifted. Enoch felt it before he saw Morgan. The second the diner door creaked and they stepped out, Hattie between them, Mavis adjusting her shawl, they heard it. A gunshot cracked through the street. Down, Enoch shouted, pulling both women behind a freight wagon. Splinters flew as another bullet tore through a crate beside them. The scream of horses and the clatter of boots echoed through the narrow street. Morgan Fitch rode down the street like hell's own shadow, rifle in hand, face half masked against the cold. Townsfolk scattered, ducking behind barrels and carts. A mother yanked her child into a doorway. A dog barked and fled. Enoch fired once, missed. Morgan kept coming. Horse! Now! Enoch growled. He grabbed Hattie's hand, then Mavis's, and they bolted for the alley behind the stables. His boots slammed against the mud-slick ground, heart hammering louder than gunfire. By the time they reached the back gate, Enoch had untethered his mare, pulled Hattie up behind him, and barked, "Hold tight." Mavis clung to the back rigging, her face pale. Snow had started falling, wet and thick, the kind that stung the eyes and blurred the hills. They rode hard through the trees, hooves slicing through mud and frozen leaves. Branches clawed at them. Morgan followed, relentless. Another shot rang out, clipping a branch above Enoch's shoulder. Hattie whispered, "He's close." "I know." The mountain pass narrowed. Enoch turned sharply toward a ridge trail only locals knew, an old fur trapper's path half swallowed by brush. The horse stumbled but regained its stride. Morgan's horse shrieked behind them, skidding on wet stone. They gained distance. Night fell heavy. Wind howled through the pines. The forest closed in like a fist. Enoch led them to a crevice halfway up the slope, a shallow cave, hidden by hanging roots and rock. They slipped inside, breath heaving. Frost already rimmed the entrance. No fire, no light, only silence, broken by the echo of far-off hoofbeats. "We stay here till morning," Enoch said, voice low but steady. Mavis leaned back against the stone wall, rubbing her hands. "I never thought I'd be hiding in the damn mountains like a bandit." "You're not hiding," Hattie said. "You're surviving." They rested in shifts. Enoch kept his rifle across his lap. Once, close to dawn, a figure passed the trail above them. Morgan, limping, cursing into the wind. Enoch raised the rifle. He didn't miss. A cry of pain split the air. But no thud of body. "He'll live," Enoch said, lowering the weapon. "But he'll bleed." By morning, the snowfall had eased. Pale light filtered through pine needles. The world was hushed, but not peaceful. Mavis stood, brushing dust from her coat. "I have to go back." Enoch turned. "What?" "I have to testify," Mavis said. "Go to the sheriff. Tell them what I saw. Not just for her." She looked at Hattie. Her voice cracked. "For me too. I've lived with silence long enough." Hattie stepped forward. For the first time, she reached out, not to find her way, but to offer something. She wrapped her arms around Mavis. No words passed between them, but nothing more needed saying. The courthouse in Elkhorn was small, with windows that let in more wind than light, and pews that creaked with the weight of spectators who hadn't come to see justice. They'd come to see a ghost return to life. Mavis Greer stood tall at the witness stand. Her hands clutched a small envelope. Inside, a note she had hidden for years. It bore Tate's handwriting, dated the night of his death, promising Hattie more hours at the inn, a room key, and the promise of safety. That note, and the locket bearing his initials, had sat in a tin box under her bed, locked away like a sin. But today, Mavis unlocked everything. She told them the truth, how Tate had cornered Hattie, how she'd heard the commotion, seen the fall, how the man who had tried to own everything had finally slipped on the water he'd spilled trying to scare a blind girl, and how silence, hers, had nearly destroyed the only innocent soul in the room. The judge listened. The sheriff looked her in the eyes and nodded. No more doubt, no more running. Morgan Fitch didn't say much when they cuffed him. The forged papers he carried were burned publicly in the town square. He was charged with unlawful capture, trafficking, and carrying fraudulent federal documents. For once, the law remembered its oath. When the court clerk called Hattie's name, Hattie Quinn, "You may stand," there was no sneer, no sarcasm, no auctioneer's laughter, just her name. Like it meant something again. Like she meant something again. Afterward, Enoch didn't say much. He packed the horse, helped her mount. They left before sundown, riding the same trail they had come down days ago, but it felt different now, lighter, quieter. They reached the cabin by nightfall. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, as if the house had waited, breath held. At the porch, Enoch turned to her. "I told you once," he said, voice low, "you'd see home again. Do you believe me now?" Hattie turned her face toward his, one hand resting on the doorframe. "I don't just believe it," she whispered. "I remember the way." And then, for the first time, she stepped through the door first. "Thank you for riding with us through the wind-swept trails of heartbreak and hope." Hattie Quinn's journey wasn't just about finding justice. It was about reclaiming her voice, her name, and her place in a world that tried to silence her. And Enoch Wilder? He reminded us all that sometimes the loudest love is the one that says the least, but stays the longest. If this story moved you, made you feel, or made you believe again in the quiet power of standing by someone, you know what to do. Hit that like button to let the dust settle. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more tales of forbidden glances, silent cowboys, and the kind of love that defies guns, laws, and time itself. Until next ride, partners, stay wild, stay brave, and never stop believing in the kind of love that finds you, even when you can't see it coming.